is Jacob, and tonight I am going to be giving you dating advice. So, as I'm sure you are all very, very well aware, dating is hard. Dating is hard at any stage of life, but there's something in particular about trying to date and find the right person when you're in your 20s that feels absolutely fucking impossible. Whether it's dealing with getting ghosted, or trying to learn how to use dating apps, or dealing with hookup culture, or getting into these talking stages that literally never seem to turn into actual relationships, or maybe it's just figuring out what you're doing with the rest of your life because you are a 20-something that has no clue what you're doing. It can all start to feel really overwhelming and even a little bit hopeless. Lord knows I have spent many a night staring at my ceiling, asking myself what the hell I'm doing with my life, both romantically and just personally. So, being that I am now in a really happy relationship, I wanted to share with you guys some tips and things that I learned and tried to do while I was single that I think not only kept me from losing my mind, but also put me in a position to end up with the incredible woman I am now dating. So, if you're a hopeless romantic, this video is for you, because I'm going to give you a list of my 10 favorite pieces of dating advice, and these have all come from my personal experience, so they're vetted and they are rooted in lots of trauma and disappointment. So I hope that by the end of this video you can go forth into the world of dating, be it online or real, and be equipped with the skills to find that special somebody that completes you. I'm not guaranteeing that's going to happen, but a man can dream. And if you can't do that, then at the very least, I hope you can end up with somebody that is emotionally available. Why don't we start with that? Let's not ask for too much. So, anyways, I am going to be looking down and referencing this list to make sure I don't forget anything. But if there's one thing from this list I remember, it's the first point, because I'm gonna come out swinging. This first one is a hard hitter. So, get out your notebooks, pull up your Hinge profiles, and hit the edit icon, because we are about to give your dating life a serious upgrade. Okay, this first one, as I just said, it's serious, so listen up. Number 1, stop making everything about you. It's almost never about you. Let me repeat that. Stop making everything about you. It's literally almost never about you. Now, this is great advice for dealing with people in general, but I think that if you are somebody who is actively trying to date and get to know people right now, you need to constantly remind yourself of this truth, because if you're like me and you're a people pleaser, you probably have a tendency to take any negative interaction you have with another person and internalize it and say that it was your fault. So let's make this dating specific. Maybe you went on a date with somebody and they said they had a great time and they ghosted you. Or you started talking to somebody and they kind of led you on, and eventually you told them, like, what the fuck? I want a date. Like, come on, let's be serious. And they ended things. Or maybe you got cheated on. It could be any bad shit that happened to you. You have to stop taking it so personally. The truth of the matter is, when you are trying to get to know people, you rarely have any idea what they are actually going through and what they are actually like. You might go on a couple dates with somebody and think you know who they are, but you really don't. And for that reason, when things don't work out, you need to stop telling yourself it was your fault. I think most of us either are this person or know somebody who's like this. They come back from a relationship that didn't work out or a bad date and they say, oh my god, like, maybe I just could have been more entertaining, or I could have been funnier, or god, I didn't ask enough questions. I should have texted them sooner after the date and then they wouldn't have ghosted me. I should have picked a better date spot. I should be in better shape. I should whatever. I should this. I should that. I should anything to have made the situation work. No, you need to shut the hell up and stop telling yourself that. People will break up with you or mistreat you or do you dirty for so many different reasons, and I can guarantee you that almost none of them will ever have anything to do with you. That guy who ghosted you after the first date might have met another girl that turned out to be the love of his life. That probably didn't happen, but stick with me here. He might have gotten fired from his job the next day. He might have gotten hit by a car and he's in a coma. He might have gotten so high when he got home that he completely forgot he went on a date with you. So many things can happen. He might just have mommy issues. I'm telling you, there are a million reasons things with other people don't work out. But of course, this is much easier said than done, because when somebody rejects you or does something bad to you, all you can think about is what you might have done differently. And I wanted to start with this point because I think that it is a huge turning point in your dating escapades when you can learn that most times it's just not going to work out. And that's not a reflection of who you are as a person. It's a reflection of the world, which is that getting into good relationships is difficult, and staying in them is even more difficult. It hurts me to see so many people who get discouraged by one or two bad experiences in a relationship. Rightfully so, because it's hard to pick yourself back up, but I think reminding yourself that most of these people who are trying to date you, especially when you're young and they're young, are just as lost in the world as you are. It kind of keeps you from putting that chip on your shoulder that might otherwise make you just not want to date or go into your next date feeling really pessimistic and on guard. So, yeah, I think the only scenario where this would not be applicable is if you are the reason that things keep not working out. Like, if you get into 3 different relationships and they all end for the same reason, then maybe that is a good point to do a little bit of self-reflecting. But as long as you're doing your best and working on yourself, I think you gotta remind yourself that this shit is hard, and it's not because you're inferior. Most of the time, it's them not being inferior, but just any host of reasons. Anyways, I'm rambling. Let's get straight to number 2 now. Number 2. When things are going well with somebody, do not tell your friends or family right away. Okay, so now we are getting to the other side of things, which is when you go on a date or start talking to somebody and things are going really well. I actually did this with my girlfriend. I didn't tell my family about her until I had known her for about 4.5 months and seen her twice because we don't live in the same place. And this is the logic behind why I did that. First of all, I'm just a really private person, and whenever I have a special moment with somebody, be it romantic or not, I love to hold on to those moments. Something to me feels kind of, I don't want to say gross, but kind of not inauthentic or just disingenuous when you have a really special memory or night or date with a person and then go tell your friend all about it. I feel like that was a moment that happened between the two of you guys, and it should stay like that, even just for a little bit of time. I think a classic example of this for me came in high school when all my friends started dating girls or hooking up with girls, and every day at lunch, all that anybody would want to talk about was, oh my god, like, have you made out with her yet? Have you guys hooked up? Like, what have you done? And I would listen to these guys just, like, spill their guts about everything that had happened between them and another girl. And these were private, serious, intimate things, and it always made me feel so bad for the other person. And so when I started talking to my girlfriend, I wanted to hold on to the beauty and newness of it. But that's only one reason. The second, and debatably more valuable reason you should just give it a minute before you start telling the world that you are now spoken for, is that I think we have a tendency to get our hopes and expectations up when we start telling other people about what's going on in our lives. I think we've all been there. You tell your friend about this new person you're talking to, and then they start asking about them, and then you start getting in your head because they'll ask questions like, so have you guys hung out again yet, or have you guys done this or that, or have you talked about dating? And maybe you haven't hung out again, or you haven't done what they asked, or you're not dating and you haven't discussed it, and you start getting in your head and telling yourself, oh my god, my friend just asked about this, that must mean I should be doing that, or I should start thinking about asking her out. You start getting all in your head about shit, and you start letting this other person, even if they have good intentions, get in your head with their idea of how a relationship should go, and it's just messy. I would encourage you to just take some time, whether it's a few days or a week or even a month, and just let things warm up by themselves. Just you and that other person enjoying the experience of getting to know each other, independent of other people. I know that's not always possible, and there's nothing more exciting than telling your friends or relatives about this new person you're falling in like with, but I think it's something you owe to yourself, and especially to that person, to try. Okay, number 3. This is a bit more of a practical piece of advice, but I think everybody needs to invest in a go-to first date outfit, and that includes perfume or cologne. This is kind of just something I've been struggling with in general because I don't leave the house a lot right now. I work from home. And so whenever I do go out to meet friends, or whenever I'm visiting my girlfriend and we go on a date, I have no idea what to wear, and it fills me with so much anxiety and frustration that it makes me not even want to leave the house. And that is something that you cannot afford to do if you are trying to date, unless you want to have every date in your house, which I do not recommend. So, I know we've all been there. You're excited to go on a first date, and you spend hours the night before trying to pick out the perfect outfit, and you're trying to figure out how to style your hair, and what accessories to wear, and what cologne or perfume you should try, and if you should use the body lotion because it has a scent, or what they might think of this necklace versus that, and what shoes you should wear. I think you could save yourself a lot of time and anxiety by maybe spending a little bit of money on a good pair of pants or a shirt. Like, it doesn't have to be a whole thing, but just spending the time and or money putting together an outfit that you feel confident in, that you feel sexy in, whatever your adjective is, that you know you can wear when the time arises. switch it up, but I personally am not the most stylish of individuals, and so I think I could really benefit from this right now, being in a relationship. And my best friend has gone on a few dates this year, and every time he goes on one, not every time, but at least a couple times, he's FaceTimed me and asked me what I thought of his outfit. And I can see how stressed out he is, and I can't help but think that if he had one go-to staple shirt, that it would make his life a lot easier. Anyways, number 4. Only use one dating app at a time. This is unfortunately a lesson that I had to learn the hard way, because there was a time a couple of years ago when I was single, and I don't even want to say it, but it's the truth. I had 3 dating apps at once. I had Tinder, I had Hinge, and I had Bumble. And I am not exaggerating by any fraction of my imagination when I say that this was the lowest point in my dating journey. I felt like I had a full-time job trying to use 3 apps at once. I was on my phone constantly. I was trying to have a dozen different conversations at once. I was seeing like hundreds of people a day on my phone, which is not good for you at all. And ultimately something that I thought was a good idea, because I was like, oh, I'll just like have multiple accounts so that I can like maybe go on more dates or meet more people. It turned into such a commitment and a stressor in my life that it made me not even want to hang out with anybody. So, I know people have mixed views on dating apps, but I think that if you decide to use one, that you should just use one at a time and focus more on having quality conversations if you can. And I don't want to get all like tactical and strategic here, but I don't know, just like making the profile that you have for that one dating app like good, instead of just throwing up 3 as quickly as you can just to try and start getting matches. I think when it comes to dating apps, less is more, and it's kind of just a matter of being patient and not trying to force things, because trying to force things romantically is the quickest way to find yourself miserable. I also think this is something I'm going to touch on, actually, my next bullet, but when you start trying to talk to a lot of people at once, you give yourself a lot of different expectations about a lot of different people, and it's just a mess. Yeah, that's kind of all I've got to say on that. Just tread carefully, please. Anyways, I just mentioned it, but point number 5 is this: let go of your expectations, but not all of them. There's this great quote I heard, and it must have been a few years ago at this point, but it went something like, the easiest way to be disappointed is to have expectations. And while I think that is a great bit of advice, I feel like life is really dull and colorless without at least a little bit of hope and aspiration for the things that are coming your way. However, I will say that I think one of the biggest problems people deal with when they're dating is that they will pin all of their hopes and dreams and imaginary future children and homes and vacations and honeymoons and weddings on people that they have not even been on a date with one time. And when you put that kind of pressure on another person to be exactly who you want them to be and to a world of misery and pain and suffering. I have too many stories like this, but really the main thing that I remember in terms of letting my expectations get in the way of myself came when I was in my senior year of college and graduating and just going to the bars every weekend with my friends and expecting to find the love of my life. I know we've all been there. Once again, it makes me cringe to think about, but it's just not smart to go out and have the expectation that you are going to find not only like the one, but anybody at all. I know that's not exciting. Like, we all get excited about going out or going to social settings, whether it's a party or a club or a kickback or whatever, kind of secretly hoping that there's somebody there that we might be able to talk to, but you just have to temper that a little bit. And I feel like it's so easy to let those expectations get away from you, but when you do that, they always come right back and punch you in the throat. When I was in these situations, I would put so much pressure on myself to dress perfectly or make good jokes or be charismatic and do a bunch of things that were not realistic for me because they just weren't who I was in a normal conversation. And not only did putting this pressure on myself make me feel super nervous and anxious, but it also meant that I went to bed most nights after going out just totally miserable and demoralized because I wasn't myself. And not only was I not myself, but things never materialized with anybody because I wasn't being who I really am. And this is kind of a bitter pill for people to swallow, but it's much better to be yourself and be single than to pretend you're somebody that you're not and be with somebody else. It's hard to keep up an act for a long time. And when you put expectations on somebody to be somebody that they aren't, you're forcing them to pretend, and that is never bound to end up well in a relationship. So, I think this is best summarized by saying that when you set high expectations for yourself, you also pass them on to the other person. And that's great in many scenarios in life, but when you are casually talking to somebody and trying to get to know them, your expectations need to match the stage of the relationship that you are at with them. That's not me saying just stop giving a fuck about anything, which is why I said don't let go of all your expectations, but I think it's something that you acquire through experience, which is learning not to have such high hopes for something that is so new. Anyways, number 6. Listen more than you speak, but do not interview the other person. Now, this is specific to first dates or just first conversations, getting to know somebody. In my life in general, I love to leave conversations feeling like I learned more about the other person than they learned about me. And the reason I do this might have something to do with trying to maintain my mysterious aura, and it also might have to do with the fact that I have no confidence in anything I say or believe, and therefore do not want to share it with other people and risk having what little of a self-image I have destroyed. But I live by this mindset anyways. I think a lot of people go on dates and have a tendency to get nervous and start oversharing. And then they experience something called a vulnerability hangover. Shout out to my therapist for teaching me that term, but you can kind of piece together what it means after you share too much of your personal life and face with another person, you feel like shit because you feel like you said more than you should have. That is the worst feeling ever. Now let me be clear. I am not saying don't share anything, don't talk, and just ask questions because, like I just said, this first date is not an interview. You do not want to make the other person feel like they are on stand at a trial. That's not fun. But I tried to come up with an actually applicable strategy for this, and I feel like this makes sense. I wrote down, I think that you should ask 2 questions for every one that you answer. Obviously, you don't have to actually stick to that, but maybe try to. Maybe you ask them something like, oh, what do you do for work? And they'll say, oh, I am an accountant at this small firm in the city. And you say something like, oh, that's cool, how long have you been working there? And they say about 6 to 8 months. And if I'm being real with you, if I were having this conversation with a person, I would probably ask more questions, but I'm just urging you to be careful about not taking it too far and making them feel like they're getting interrogated. Yeah, I feel like that's just a very personal one for me. I like to listen more than I like to speak. So, that all being said, let's move on to number 7. The 7th thing I think you should consider when you are out and about dating is shoot your shot, but not every time. Now, I've actually had a couple of you guys ask me for advice in the comments on situations that you are in with people where you felt like they liked you, but you weren't totally sure, and you knew that you liked them, but you were scared to bring it up to them. And to every person who's approached me with a scenario like that, I have said, shoot your shot. Go for it. And that's just because I'm a big proponent of taking control of your destiny and being the person to put in effort first. When I think back on my life in general, not just romantically, I personally have more regrets about things that I didn't do as opposed to things that I tried to do that didn't work out. Because at the end of the night, if I tried to reach out to somebody and they didn't respond, I could go to bed knowing that at least I tried. And I just want to be the kind of person who can say that they always tried their best. Not only this, but I think something that a lot of people forget is that, not forget, but I feel like people have such a negative perception of dating now that a lot of it is done online that they forget one of the greatest parts about dating in the digital world, which is that you don't have to get rejected in person. So if you see somebody on Instagram or know them through a mutual that you think is cute, you literally have nothing to lose by sending them a DM and saying, hey, just wanted to say I think you're cute. I don't know what the fuck you would say. I hope you didn't come here for pickup lines. That is not my thing, but I think you get my point. At the very worst, they don't even see it. I guess that's not true. I guess the very worst scenario would probably be that they take a screenshot of your DM and post it on TikTok, and it goes viral, and you have to drop out of school and quit your job and go off the grid and live on a farm in Eastern Europe. That's probably the worst outcome, but anyways, my camera is kind of dying right now, so we might have to do these last couple in the dark, and that's because I've been trying to film this for the last 2 hours, and I just can't get it right, so hopefully this ends up being a good video, but anyways. Shoot your shot. You never know if it's going to work out or not, and at the very least, you know you did everything you could, and that is the kind of person you want to be, and those are the kind of people that end up in happy relationships, in my opinion. Number 8, you don't need unique date ideas. You need to be a unique date. So in other words, be yourself. I used to do this when I was in high school. If a girl and I were talking and we agreed to go on a date or hang out, I would try to come up with the craziest, most unique date idea that they had never heard of before, because I wanted to show them that I was different and that I cared to put in the effort to do something that other guys wouldn't. And I'm not saying it never works, because I think it's very noble to put in effort and try to do something different. But what I do want to say is that that is not what is going to make a girl or guy or whoever want to be with you. They're going to want to be with you because of who you are, and because you are unique. So, I guess I kind of wanted to make this point to say that I don't think you need to break your back coming up with some revolutionary idea when you're going on a first date. And if you're not the person planning the date, I don't think it's fair to expect the other person to do something like that, because it's a lot of effort to put in for something that is not guaranteed to work. And I want to be clear, that's not me saying don't put effort in unless you know it's going to work, but you don't need to spend $400 and 3 full days planning a date that's for somebody you barely know yet. I feel like that actually might set a bad expectation for people who you are taking on said date. And again, dating is so subjective. Like, there might be people who absolutely love that you put a bunch of effort into making a date really unique and special and personal to them. But I don't think there's anything wrong with just going to dinner or grabbing a drink or going on a walk and, saving yourself the anxiety of planning and spending it on having a quality conversation with the person and getting to know them. My camera's dead now, so now I gotta try and finish this up, but yeah, I think you guys get the point. What makes the date special is you. Okay. Number 9. Set your boundaries early and often. I think one of the worst things that can happen to people in relationships is sacrificing your priorities and values just to make somebody else happy. I know people in relationships right now who are doing this, and it's because they do not have the confidence to, share what they really think about things or what they really want out of the relationship or even just their personal lives. And they have gone so long without making these things clear that they're now in a position where trying to speak up would be perceived as like, oh, you're not happy in the relationship, or oh, you don't like me. That makes me so sad to see, and it's so uncomfortable, and I know it feels shitty. I dealt with it in my first relationship. I know that all we want to do on a first date is keep things fun and lighthearted, but I think that if you're serious about dating, you need to be serious about your boundaries. That doesn't mean you have to, cut somebody off in the middle of a conversation to expressly state everything that is important to you and everything you're looking for in a relationship, but, a lot of those questions naturally arise on first dates or early stages of relationships, and I think that when they come up, you need to stand tall and be firm about what matters to you and what you are looking for and what you expect as a person. Because if you don't, well, it's really hard to get those things back later on. Not only does speaking about these things kind of establish a level of self-respect that I think is great for people, but I feel like it's also a great way to see how much the other person actually respects you. If you tell them that you do not want to be intimate until the relationship is serious, and you make that clear, and then they try to pull a move on you at the end of the first date, well, there you go. They don't respect your boundaries, and they should not be somebody in your life. I know, it's always more complicated in the moment, but if you set your boundaries and your priorities, and you know them, then it's a great way to filter out people who aren't willing to listen to or respect them. I just don't think you have to give up pieces of yourself to be with somebody else. There's this concept I learned in my communications class in college, which is that compromise and collaboration are not the same. When two people have to compromise, neither of them gets exactly what they want. But when two people collaborate, they find a way to enhance one another's lives without having to sacrifice so much of their own. That is a little reductive because I know that relationships do require sacrifice, but I think you get the point. You shouldn't have to compromise on your values and your most foundational boundaries, so don't. Okay, number 10, and again, I'm sorry we're doing this in the dark, but last one. Be alone or be happy. Just don't be in between. Now, don't lie to me, that kind of goes hard. Be alone or be happy. Just don't be in between. I know that this is a little simplistic as well, but I feel like when you're young, it's so important to only be in romantic relationships that you feel like are truly enhancing your life. I, once again, know quite a few people who are kind of just suffering in relationships because they are not comfortable being alone. They would rather deal with the toxicity or the emotional manipulation or the lies or the cheating or the whatever, because it means they get to stay in a relationship and have those brief moments of joy and peace. I know it's hard to actually live up to this, but it is so much better to be alone and deal with the discomfort that comes from doing that than to deal with the discomfort and misery that comes from giving up so much of your life just to say you're with somebody else. This is one of the most difficult lessons that I have ever had to learn, just as a person, not as somebody who dates, and I made a lot of mistakes before I got to the point where I understood this. It's just one of those things that, unfortunately, I feel like you have to go through to truly learn. But if you're one of those people who is maybe in a relationship that isn't going well, or is single and sees people in relationships and all you want is to be one of them, I would just encourage you to think about how much time and yet how little time you have. You do not deserve to spend your short time on this planet in a shitty relationship, being mistreated. It would be much better spent on your own, trying to be better as a person and learn and grow up and acquire the life experience that is going to let you naturally run into somebody else who is a much better fit for you. And I know it's hard because you're trading certainty for uncertainty, but I would most certainly rather be alone than be so unhappy in a relationship that wasn't working just for the sake of being with somebody and not having to be alone. Okay, I think I have kind of covered everything I wanted to. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm sorry the camera died. It was just because I spent so much time trying to get this right, but if you have any thoughts or things you want to add on to anything I mentioned in the video, please drop them down below. I would love to hear anything you guys share. That's my favorite part of making these, and I hope that this was helpful for whoever was listening, whether you were looking for serious advice or just some relaxing whispers to fall asleep to. I hope you got what you were looking for. Thank you guys so much if you made it this far, and I will see you again next week.